Hi, welcome to our presentation on first generation lawyering. My name is Alex Rogers. I'm the Director of Career and Professional Development at Belmont Law School in Nashville, Tennessee. And before I came to academia, I was a poverty law litigator at a nonprofit in Middle Tennessee. And we have a great group of young lawyers, and I'll let them introduce themselves. Let's start with Cole.
Hey everyone, my name is Cole Harold Morris. I am an attorney at the Shelby County Sheriff's Office. Let me go see. I kind of went the non-traditional route to law school. I went to find myself in Orlando, Florida for many years, working for Disney before I went to undergrad and finished my undergrad and then went to law school and went that route. So it's good to be here. Hi everybody.
Nice, good to have you. Lauren?
Hey everybody, my name's Lauren Hiller. I'm an attorney in Nashville. I, following what Cole said, went much more traditional. High school, college, law school, career. Didn't take any time to hang out at Disney World like I should have, being a Florida boy. And now I'm here in Nashville working. I've been for about 9 years as an attorney.
Nice. Raven?
Hi, everyone. My name is Raven Austin. I'm a special assistant United States attorney in Chattanooga. I kind of same as Lauren, high school, college. I graduated from Alabama a year early, so I did take a year off. And then I went to law school and became a prosecutor. I've been doing it ever since.
Nice. Chakoya?
Hi everyone, I'm Chakoya Smith. Unlike Lauren and Raven, I did take a couple of years off in between college and law school because I didn't think I wanted to be a lawyer anymore, but my grandmother basically made me take the LSAT and go to law school. And so here I am. Graduated law school, went into private practice for 2 years at one of the oldest all-Black law firms in Nashville in the state of Tennessee. Left there in the summer of 2020 and went to the DA's office, stayed there for about 4.5 years, prosecuting domestic violence cases. And now I am a senior litigation associate at Ortel Kelly, where I prosecute, or not prosecute, where I handle mostly HOA cases.
Nice. You've had all over the place kind of career, which is really interesting. Morgan?
Hi, everyone. I'm Morgan Hanna. I practice here in Nashville, Tennessee, in-house as an associate general counsel, mainly in insurance law and also really regulatory insurance law. Before that, I was an immigration attorney for a few years. So I did a complete kind of 180. So it just tells you that you can definitely pivot and change your trajectory as an attorney. Other than that, I attended Rhodes College as an undergrad, and then I did 2 years working at a subrogation ERISA firm before I went to law school.
Neat. Nice. Well, it's nice to get to know you all. We have such a wide range of different kinds of experiences, so I think this is a really great lineup. So first, I want to kind of center our conversation and ground us. I want to talk about what it means to you to be first gen, because I think that means different things to different people. Before I was a lawyer, I would not have probably considered myself like a first gen attorney because my parents went to college. They're both teachers, they have master's degrees, but no one in my family was a lawyer. And I don't think I realized how many of my peers grew up with lawyers in their family and kind of how common that is in the legal profession until I really kind of got into law school and got into practice and thought, oh wow, like I could have had such a leg up had I had lawyers in the family, despite having, parents that went to college. So I want to, Lauren, for you, like, how do you define first gen for yourself? And when did you realize you were one?
Yeah, Alex, similar to you, both of my parents went to college. My dad's highly educated, grew up in academia. But nobody in my family, not my parents, not my grandparents, no uncles, no aunts, no cousins, nobody I know, nobody I really knew, in fact, was a lawyer. My first interactions with lawyers were when I was in law school. And ironically, I met my wife in law school, and she is also a lawyer. So one day, my daughter is going to tell people that both of her parents are lawyers, and maybe I'll be a lawyer too. And I will tell her not to do that.
She won't be a
Um,
lawyer. I'm sure she won't. That's how it'll go.
but she could be a not first generation lawyer one day, and that would be a first for my family. But yeah, similarly, I just didn't see it, so I didn't really think about first generation until I was amongst a bunch of lawyers who had parents or brothers or sisters that have been doing that.
Yeah. Raven, what about for you? Similar or a different story?
Um, I thought I was first gen, or my definition of first gen is neither one of my parents have bachelor's degrees. My mom is a registered nurse and she has been longer than I have been alive, but she went from high school and got an associate's degree. And so growing up, my parents told my brother and I that we were first gen college, or we were able to be first gen college students. I didn't actually use that, I guess, to my advantage when I went to college. I actually never checked the box that I was first gen. It wasn't until I got to law school that I realized, oh, like some of my classmates' parents are PhDs and multiple masters and things like that. That I realized I was kind of on a different playing field. But I never really, I don't necessarily, I don't want to say I admitted, but I never actually outwardly admitted that I was a first generation college student, period, let alone law student. And I didn't know a single attorney growing up. Had never interacted with any attorneys ever until I became a law student.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's so, I think we underestimated maybe how many of our colleagues would kind of come into the profession with a built-in knowledge. I think it really clicked for me in law school that I was first gen because all these acronyms being used that I just did not know what they meant. Even something so simple as like litigation, transactional, civil. I remember it was weeks into law school when it finally clicked what that meant. And I was kind of thinking like, oh, people come in like with this well established for them. And so just kind of operating, sometimes it felt like a few steps behind everyone else that had this advantage. Um, so in line with that, I want to ask, what were some of the biggest challenges you faced in law school as a first generation student, maybe academically or maybe socially, financially, kind of whichever way you want to take it? Chakoya, I'm interested in your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so I struggled a lot as a law student. So at UT, where I went for undergrad, I did not take it seriously. So um, my GPA wasn't the best, and I was not the best student. So when I got to law school, after taking a couple of years off, I realized, okay, I have to be a better student. I have to be 10 times better than I was before. Not only that, my mom and grandma could not afford to put me through law school. My mom and grandma are not, I am a first gen all the way around, first gen college graduate, law student. So for me, it was all about me. So financially, I had to find a way to make money. When I went to Belmont, we were told we could not have a job. So I had to pick up odd hours at the library to try to bring in some money. My mom was a single parent, so she couldn't offer as much help as she would have preferred. So it was a struggle for me. I also struggled with the acronyms. I remember finding out that Alex, our law school building, was named after someone in our class, someone in their family, and I was like, oh, he has it made. Great guy though, great guy.
Yeah.
But still, he came in with a wealth of knowledge that I did not have. I will say though that our class was great in making sure that we all had the same knowledge. We used Blackboard, or I don't know what it's called now, to share different information that others may not have. So while I did struggle, I was blessed to have classmates that helped each other instead of thinking that we all had to fight the curve or fight against each other to be at the top of the curve. So it was a struggle, a huge struggle financially and academically, but I was able to get through with the help of my classmates.
Yeah, I think that's such a point for like a good collaborative environment, and we'll talk about mentorship a little later, but like I think we get so focused in on thinking mentors have to be people a lot older than us with years of experience. It can be your peers. It can be your classmates. Like those are some of the best mentors I feel like I have are people my age who I went to school with who I'm, are supportive of me. And so yeah, I think that's so great. Cole, what about you? Any challenges you faced as a first gen student?
So, yes, but kind of almost opposite of Shakoya. So I always knew I was a first gen lawyer, but definitely not a first gen college student. I mean, my family, they're all either doctors or teachers. I'm the only lawyer in my family. and it that alone is a challenge. But when it comes to when I went to undergrad, I came out with like a 3.9 GPA, could barely open a book, double major, triple minor. So when I started law school, one thing they don't tell you before going to law school is every way you knew how to study, throw it out the window because it is a whole new ball game. So I thought I could do what I did in undergrad, all this stuff, including working a full-time job and going to law school. I learned the very, very hard way, and by the grace of God and the skin of my teeth, I passed my first semester. However, if I wanted to stay in law school, I had to make some big, big changes. So I put in all this work to get into law school. So it was no brainer. I quit my job. I did everything I needed to do to change my study habits and kind of put my own little ego aside. So that was the big game change that um, I couldn't just barely open a book and study or do all these extracurricular things I did in undergrad. I can't do them all in my first year of law school. So that was the big change that
Yeah.
I had to learn that they don't tell you. I had no one in my family who was a lawyer to tell you, no, when they say don't work, they mean don't work.
Right. No, you're right. I share this with students all the time. Like, you, everyone kind of in law school, I feel like comes from being the top of their undergraduate program and not probably having to try that hard. And then you're kind of all put in this pressure cooker of like the smartest people you've been around, and we're all fighting for the same few points. And that can be, if you, and especially if you're walking into that environment without a baseline, knowing that's how it's going to be, I mean, that can be such a shock, I think. We hit on this a little bit, and I want to pitch this to Morgan. When you were in law school, were there any particular programs, mentors, student groups, anything like that that made a difference for you, especially as a first gen lawyer?
Yeah, I think it's so important. Just when you're, so for me, I didn't, so when I first saw this email about, people who had, pretty much were first generation, for me, my parents went to college, they graduated from college. So I had to look at the email twice first to realize, oh, wait, I'm actually a first generation attorney, not undergrad student. So as far as a mentorship, I would say that's super important because obviously you don't come in with the same, uh, just the same support system as far as like people that went to law school in your family or that can give you that type of knowledge. You have the support from family, but not that firsthand insight. So I would say mentorship is super important. Reaching out to people at your school, alums, when you network at your college or at your law school, and y'all have these different events and things for first years or second years or 3Ls. So I think those are super important to go to. I have a few mentors who are incredibly meaningful mentors to me, and I met them at UT Law. So through other mentors that I had that were students, and I also met them through just going to different networking opportunities and events like that. And so those have been really instrumental in my life as far as just thought processes, or if I need any questions answered, or if I just want to pick their brains. Also, just professors as well. So I feel like it's really important just to reach out. And I also think that the worst thing people can tell you is no. So that's with mentorship, opportunities, internships, clerkships, summer associate positions. Apply and ask. The worst they can tell you is no, and also prepare.
Yeah. And I want to get your follow-up thoughts on that because I do think mentorship is such a cornerstone of our profession, but I think law students and young lawyers struggle with like, how do I find a mentor? How do I cultivate this mentor relationship? So I know you mentioned like just reach out. The worst they do is say no. Like, was that your strategy to finding mentors? Like,
So
what
I will, I guess,
you?
just because it sounds like you want to get more information. So I'll just tell you some of them. I know in law school I was in various programs and leadership things, and I was leading this and moot court board chair and all of that. But I know in BALSA, Black Law Students Association, particularly, we have this BALSA buddy type of mentorship program where if you're a 1L, you got a BALSA buddy. If you're a 2L, you got a BALSA buddy. So later on in that my 3L year, I was like over the recruitment and all that for Bossa Buddies. But my 1L year, I had a Bossa Buddy, Nakisha Jackson, from Memphis, went to Vanderbilt. She introduced me and two other of my law school classmates who were from Memphis to a particular mentor. His name is Will Perry. Since you're asking all these questions, I'm going to go ahead and
shout him out.
she introduced us to our mentor, Will, multiple of us from Memphis, about 3 of us. And she's like, hey, he loves to mentor law students. He loves, Memphis students and just mentoring students in general. And so that was a great opportunity for us to get connected with him. But I will also say it's up to the student to reach out. So you can have these resources, but if you don't reach out, I tell my mentees, people at Rhodes, I love Rhodes. I tell the students all the time, because they always have us on these panels, but it's like, we give you our information. It's up to you to reach out. We're willing to help. So that was a way to get acquainted with him. And then also Brooklyn Sawyers-Belk at UT Law. She's a phenomenal resource for so many law students. And so we got acquainted with her, I want to say our first year. A lot of our 1L class got acquainted with her just through, I want to say it was our upperclassmen introduced us to her, and she just reached out. She was really a vessel. She came and reached out to the college. She's an alumna. So those are 2 ways particularly that I got acquainted with 2 of my mentors at UT Law. Another was Professor White, Penny White. She was on the Supreme Court. She was just an incredible role model. I got acquainted with her through mock trial and court, and she's been a mentor to me ever since. So those are a few personal examples. So reach out.
That's great. I think the through line there is like, take the opportunities, reach out, talk to people. The worst they do is say no. Like, be involved, be willing to learn. And I think, to your point too, you have lots of different mentors throughout your professional career, like mentors that help you in practice, and mentors that help you in personal life, and mentors that help you with the balance between both, right? So like, I think having lots of mentors is great. Lauren, do you have thoughts on this? I'd love to hear kind of how mentorship or professional orgs have shaped your journey.
Sure. And I found that, I participated in a few of the programs, especially in law school, of like, I had a peer mentor where I had a 3L student helping me. And then I had a professional mentor that the law school matched me with. And I never really had much success with those programs because it felt too manufactured. We weren't coming together organically. We weren't meeting through some common interest. It was more so, here's a list of students and here's a list of mentors. Hopefully you guys gel. And I'd go to the meetings, they'd buy me breakfast or that sort of thing. And we would talk, and then we would come away and we would come back together in a month or 2 and nothing had changed. But my first year, I had an externship with a local state court judge in Denver. I was at the University of Denver for law school. And he ended up being a figure in my life, even till, as early as last week when I was texting with him. Someone that I took his classes that he taught on trial practice 2L and 3L year, and worked with him, and then eventually hired him as a mediator when he was, now that he's a private mediator and I was working in litigation. And it was just someone that I met through an internship that I had, and I got the time, or took the time, to get to know and then to follow up with. And it was much more natural and organic. And that became a really good mentor for me versus someone that was essentially thrust upon me and said, this is your mentor, title only, really. So finding someone more naturally really worked well for me.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think we have these mentorships programs in place, and they can have their place and they can be a good starting point. But the kind of mentors that we seek out and we find organically, for me, have always been the best. I want to shift gears now and talk a little bit about kind of your professional journey, especially for law students and young lawyers. I think the question on everyone's mind is like, how do I get a job? How do I get to where you are? Raven, how did being first gen, did it affect kind of the way you approached your job search or your internships or any of your early career moves?
Absolutely. First of all, my mom, like I said, is a nurse. My dad owns a towing business, and he's owned it since I was in the 7th grade. So between the 2 of them, me coming to them being like, hey, I don't know which internship I should take, or I don't know, or my first job, I had 2 job offers after I passed the bar, and talking to them, hey, I don't know which one to take. They get it. They just didn't get it. Even talking about negotiating salaries, they didn't necessarily get that either. My mom stayed at one job for almost 20 years. Fresh out of law school, I'm like, girl, you're good to get me for 7, right, or 5. But how am I supposed to, manage these conversations? They came with insight just from experience, but it wasn't. I basically had to sift through what was applicable to me as a lawyer, as a Black woman, in a space that does not necessarily reflect individuals who look like me. And I think a lot of the help came from mentors. So I would call my parents. I'll call my parents right now and ask them a question and hang up and be like, let me call somebody who went to law school. And then I'm going to use both of y'all's suggestions and combine it and do something for myself. But I think if you're going to law school and you really want to be in law school, there has to be some level of drive in you. There has to be a level of discernment in you, and you have to be able to discern what is good advice and when to apply it and who to get good advice from. And so if your family is your support system, do not turn away from them, but you have to know, unless your family is full of lawyers, which some might be, but you have to know what to take from them, and then what to turn to that mentor or that classmate whose dad is an attorney or that professor who's done what you want to do before, and apply it to your life. I think, I don't want to say my parents did me a disservice for not being lawyers, but it definitely came with its own challenges outside of graduating from law school, securing jobs and things like that, and how to maneuver from job to job.
Yeah, I feel that in my own life too. Like my parents had some okay, but they stayed at the same job, as teachers for their whole career, basically. They didn't know about career moves and things like that. Chakoya, what about you? Did being first gen shape your approach to, you've had such an interesting path through your internships and your jobs, criminal to civil to government to private practice. Did being first gen shape that path at all for you?
Absolutely. So, like Raven, I would call my mom, and my mom's response is always, "You're smart. You can figure it out." And I'm like, "Really? Are you sure?" So she put a lot of trust in me to figure things out, and a lot of times, you need advice, right? Um, every job that I had and currently have, I got through a mentor. I did not apply to one single job. The job at Mason Johnson Connor at the All Black Law Firm, I got through my mentor, which was Isaac Connor, still my mentor. He hired me. I can still call him today to get advice on, a different job. I got the job at the DA's office through my mentor, Marcus Floyd, Judge Floyd. I met him at Belmont. He's a Belmont alum, and he came out to meet the Black Law Students Association. And he met me there and was like, "You should be a prosecutor." I was like, "No, you mean the people that are like locking my family up? Absolutely not." And he's like, "No, you should. Prosecutors can create the most change." And so he asked me to intern with him, and I did, loved it. And I realized how much power prosecutors had in the room. That comes from that first gen ignorance, right? We didn't realize how much power prosecutors have in a room. And I realized how much change I could be in that space as a prosecutor, or how much change I could create. I also realized how much of a voice and advocate I could be for those who quite often don't speak up for themselves. So I got that job through Judge Floyd. And then job at Ortel Kelly, I got through a friend who's a mentor who's not a lawyer. And she could kind of see that I was getting burnt out as a domestic violence prosecutor. And I was at a conference in Vegas, and she asked me to stay a couple of days with her for a conference in Vegas. It was a homeowners association conference, and I met my now mentor, Jerry Wigger, who was like, "You should come over to Ortel Kelly," and now I'm here. So every job that I've gotten was through mentors, not because I applied, not because I, shot my shot, really was because of people who saw what I didn't see in myself. Now, when the Ortel Kelly job, I will say, someone that Morgan mentioned, Brooklyn Sawyers Bell, she is a great resource. I called her. I did not call my mom. I called Brooklyn and I was like, hey, I'm applying for this job. This is a medium-sized firm, not a big firm, not a small firm like Mason Johnson Connor, but a medium-sized firm. It appears that I'm going to be the only Black attorney there. I don't know what to ask for. I don't even know what benefits I should be asking for. She told me about a sign-on bonus. I'm like, a sign-on bonus? What is that? But if I had called my mom would have never known because she's been at the same job for 37 years, right? My grandmother was at the same job for 40 years and retired. They both work in factories. So these are terms that they couldn't really get me familiar with. And Brooklyn was nice enough to walk me through that process. And another one of my classmates, she walked them through the same process. So mentors are very valuable, especially to first gen students. But I also think to those who have lawyers in their family because the practice of law is so different. It is so different. The people that are running these law firms are so different. And so what your mother or your dad did when he first got his law job will not be the same that will work for you during this day and age. So I think having a mentor is so valuable to both first gen and law students with a long line of lawyers in their family.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I love that that's kind of been the through line is like how important mentorship is, especially for first gen lawyers. Cole, what about you? How did you learn about career opportunities when you didn't have family in the field?
So here's what was really interesting. I knew where I always wanted to go career-wise, what type of law, and I knew it was always government. So I kind of jumped on those opportunities whenever I could. But mentoring, to me, it started academically and it just built from there. So I told you all about my first semester issues. Well, luckily, the professors and the program that was put in place, there is a mentoring program, an academic mentoring program put in place, and they connect you with 3Ls to help fine tune your study habits. Anyway, and they were great, but fostering those relationships with those people, my fellow students, especially those who have been there longer, um, it allowed me to get a judicial clerkship where I met the right people between studying and improving my grades, and the people I knew connected me with opportunities like a judicial clerkship, which was great. And I'm still in my current place of employment that I got out of law school. And this was all done through networking. I was the president of our outlaw association at Memphis, and we were having an event with Jim Obergefell. And one of my mentor professors at the law school introduced me to my current boss, and it worked from there. So I didn't really so much turn to the family in that regard. I mean, they were definitely there for, good luck, but it was also you're smart, you can figure it out, kind of like what Sequoia went through. So that's kind of how that went. But even in my current place, my boss has been a great mentor and just helping me refine what needs to refine. Because, in my opinion, even as lawyers, no matter how long we are in this profession, there's always going to be room to refine and improve. And it's helped me with some current interviews that I've recently had, that seems some fruition's going to happen, but I can't talk about it just yet.
Don't jinx anything.
I
But
know, knock on wood.
no, that's great. I appreciate kind of all the different perspectives on this, and this makes me think it's my time to plug Bar Association involvement because that's really how I found my first mentor was through getting involved in TBA, and I think getting involved in bar associations or other kind of professional organizations, and then taking these kind of informational interviews, asking people how they got to where they are, what do they do, what does it mean to be a prosecutor, what does it mean to be in-house, like what does that look like, and then staying visible, I think, as a law student and as a young lawyer is so important. And I think kind of bar associations are a great way to do that. Continuing on this kind of mentorship train, Raven and Morgan talked a little bit about this, but I'm interested in your thoughts, Raven, too. How can law students or young lawyers approach potential mentors without feeling like they're being a burden? How do you kind of cultivate these mentor relationships?
if I could put it into one word, is genuine.
Ah,
I So in my current role as a special AUSA, I speak to a group of juveniles once a quarter, essentially like a watered down version of Scared Straight. And I tell them I can't prosecute you as a juvenile, but the moment you turn 18, I can, and I likely will if you keep on if you keep on going down this track. There was a school at the last meeting that I did that came down from like Pennsylvania. And so they were mixed in with juvenile. So I couldn't tell. I didn't know that there was a group there. But after it was over, one of the students came up to me and she said, I want to be a lawyer. I don't know any lawyers. I don't know any I don't know any female attorneys, is what she said. And the attorneys that I do know of are like, they're people who I know. So I don't have any real direct contact with them. And I said, okay, what do you want from me? And she said, I would love a mentor, a woman specifically who's gone to law school. And I said, okay. And I gave her my contact information. And she reached out to me within a week. She is still in undergrad. And I got the email today from Laura reminding us about this. And it forced me and it reminded me of her. And I reached out to her because I haven't heard from her in a few weeks. But lawyers going to always claim that they're busy. Everybody's busy. Everybody has a life. Everybody has something to do, right? If you are genuine in what it is you want to do, and really connecting with someone, not necessarily trying to see what you can get out of them, but to learn, I think that is easily, it'll be picked up on. People will quickly see that and want to help you. But if you're just taking, like Morgan said, if you're just taking someone's contact information just to say you have it and you're never using it, the next time I see you, I'm pretty good with faces, but the next time I see you, I'm like, oh, well, you ain't want my help. You ain't want my help. But I think being genuine, knowing what you want to do, why you want to do it, helps you find mentors. And if the person you want to be your mentor can't necessarily help you with what you want to do, they will find someone to do just that, just because they can see the drive in you, the desire to be a good attorney. And I think if you're not going to be genuine, leave people alone. Leave them alone, because we all have other things we can be doing. And so we're going to take time away from our jobs to make sure that the next generation of lawyers coming up is top of the line. You have to be genuine.
yeah. That's some great, like very actionable advice that I think we could all kind of implement. And I think when we talk about mentorship, I think networking, goes hand in hand with that. And Lauren, I regard you as a good networker. What's a networking tip that worked for you, especially as a first gen lawyer? Any tips?
Yeah, I think anybody who knows me knows I don't have much of a social filter. Like I'm usually pretty capable of just approaching a new person or a new group of people and trying to make my way into it in a genuine way. But that's something that I learned in law school. I kind of reinvented myself because I knew becoming a lawyer, everything I'd seen on TV, which was like watching Suits, was that these were all these like cool, socially flexible people who were able to, convince a room. And I knew that, being this kind of quiet, soft-spoken person from like doing band and stuff like that in high school and college, that wasn't going to work for me if I wanted to do litigation. And I think it helped that I didn't really know how lawyers acted because I didn't have any qualms about emailing the partner at a law firm that I'd never met before and saying, hey, your practice looks interesting. Can we go get lunch and talk about it? And in fact, when I was at 3L, I essentially networked my way. I built a flow chart that the career services office of my law school was passing around because I essentially networked my way through 6 different law firms trying to get to one person. And it was all, can you introduce me to this person? Can you introduce me to this person? Oh, you don't have an opportunity here. Why don't you talk to this person? And I think if I had a whole family of lawyers or a bunch of people who I already knew in the profession, they probably would have said, well, maybe start with that associate and see if they can kind of like introduce you to somebody. But I just said, no, I'm just going to talk to the person I want to talk to. And that helped me build a good network in Colorado. And since I moved to Tennessee, I mean, I've only been here for 4 years, but I feel like I know a lot of people in the industry, and that's just because I'm not afraid to just go talk to somebody.
Yeah. No, I think that's empowering. Like we keep that in mind that people don't mind to hear from us, right? Like we can reach out. Chakoya, I also am always impressed by like how many things you were at, like how many things you're involved with. You are an excellent networker. Any tips, and did being first gen kind of inform your networking approach?
Yes. So shockingly, when I came to law school, I was an introvert.
I can't believe.
And I got on an elevator with Simone for our 8 a.m. torts class. And she was like, "Good morning." And I was like, "Lord, what is wrong with this girl? It's 7 o'clock in the morning and she is too excited for me." And we became best friends. And so she helped me find that extrovert in me. And so now I can't stop talking. So let's just all blame her for that. But um, again, I know Morgan said she doesn't necessarily look for mentors. Like, there's people in their class that can be your mentor too. That was the same for me and Simone. We helped each other out in that way. But one thing that I learned throughout that process was to make and I think this is what we've all been saying, to make your mentorships personal and not transactional. I don't need you to email me just because you need something. Don't email me just because you need a recommendation. Um, or just because you want something from me. Make it personal. That is how you keep the mentorship going. There are times when I text all of my mentors happy whatever holiday it is, right? Just so they know that they're on my mind, especially on Father's Day and Mother's Day and vice versa. But then sometimes I'll just check in with them because they are humans too, and they go through things too. And so we're not the only ones that's struggling. And so just checking in and say, hey, let's go have coffee, lunch, drinks, whatever. But making it personal and not so transactional will help the mentorship thrive. And it'll also help them remember you in spaces and opportunities where you never would have imagined that your name was being spoken of.
Yeah. No, that's great. I think like that echoes Raven's point too about like genuineness and Lauren's point about like organic mentorship is always the best. I think that's such a nice through line. I want to shift gears now and talk a little bit about something we've probably all struggled with, which is imposter syndrome. I know I certainly struggled with that, and I think that's probably real for most lawyers, regardless of being first gen or not. But I think it's probably especially hits us first gen lawyers. Morgan, did you ever struggle with imposter syndrome? And if so, what helped you overcome it, or how do you work with it?
I think for me, it's just really important to work hard and know what your end goal is. And so for me, I feel like imposter syndrome can be a real thing, but when you know like what your end goal is and what you really want to do, you kind of like drown out the noise. So for me, I really leaned on, faith, my family, and just like putting in the work. And like I said, I had amazing professors, mentors. I love what Shakoya mentioned about and Raven about being genuine and all those things. That's super important to me. So I like people and I like learning and I like spreading kindness. And so my mentors were not just this transactional relationship. Like I actually like them as people. And went to a mentor's her daughter had a master's degree going away party last year. I went to that. Another mentor, his father passed a couple years ago. I went to his memorial. So I really love people. So just leaning on people who love you, your family, your mentors, and just like knowing what your goal is. I think that can help with imposter syndrome. I understand it's a real thing, but I try to really rely on those core values and just like really faith and confidence just to get me through because I know at the end of the day, this is what I want to do. This is the impact I want to make. This is the work that I want to do. So trying to drown out all the other noise and just like focus on what it is that I'm called to do.
Yeah, that's great advice. Cole, for you, I mean, you shared a little bit about some of the struggles you had, like as a 1L starting law school. What's, do you have like an aha moment when you realized like I belong in the legal profession too? Like, did you have that kind of moment for you?
Ugh. Um, Probably not the best to answer this question. I mean, as my grades improved in law school, yes, I gained more confidence, et cetera, et cetera. However, there are times where that nasty little imposter monkey still sits on my back and gnaws at me. I mean, there are times it does still get me, and I may have about a few days once every other month, where I get hit hard, really hard with that. So it does pass, but it's important for me to remember to stay on my path and keep moving forward. And then something will happen and click and be like, okay, maybe I do belong. But where I really find my solace and literally work it out is at the gym. So I go to CrossFit Monday through Friday, 5 a.m. class, and they're my own happy little family. So it's that's my break from the noise and all that, because at that point the noise I'm hearing is me, my internal screaming at, why did I just do this to myself with my muscles? But building off what Morgan said, it's drowning out the noise, and mine is with CrossFit. So
Yeah.
hopefully that monkey will get off my back. So
I
at
don't
some
know if it ever fully does. I think if we wait until we really feel like we've made it and we know everything we need to know, I think we'll probably be waiting forever for that feeling. I think it's called the practice of law for a reason, right? Like no one ever fully masters it. And for me, if I'm speaking specifically to law students, I feel like I think confidence is really built by doing and not, no other way. And so I really feel like my kind of like aha, like I do belong here was my first summer internship where I just kind of randomly went to legal aid because I thought I need a summer internship and this is as interesting as any, and not because I had a super strong passion to do that work. And then I really felt like, oh, this is like where I fit into this profession. Like this is what I could see myself doing. And so, I would encourage students and young lawyers to like try things. Like try any kind of opportunity that might be of interest because you don't know until you try. And I really think that's like kind of how you build confidence and find your place. And talking about students and young lawyers to kind of transition us, something I want to ask, maybe a couple of you all, because I all think I've all seen you do it in your own practice, and I admire it a lot. Is how do you support first gen students or lawyers who are coming up behind you? Chakoria, I see you do this a lot. Any tips to share?
So I'm always willing to speak like in settings like this. If someone calls me and asks me to go talk to law students, I'm always happy to do so. Just because, like Raven said, I didn't know any lawyers growing up. I didn't meet my first lawyer to law school. Um, and so being able to give back, I'm always willing to do that. But what I try to do the most is go back to high schools.
Hmm.
Because I think about those students that were in my class that said, I don't want to be a lawyer. I don't want to be a doctor because I don't know any. And none of them look like me. And that shouldn't be the stopping point. That shouldn't be the reason why you don't want to fulfill your dreams. So I try to go back to high schools here locally and at home to share my story because my story is very different. But to also show them that you can do it too. Um, I always say to my mentees, I'm taking the time out to mentor to you, to pour into you. And the only thing that I ask you to do is give it to someone else that's coming up behind you. Um, and I hear from my grandmother that a lot of times when she was coming up, a lot of older women did not mentor them. They always thought that, they were trying to take their spot. And so I tried to change that narrative and make sure that I am giving back to show not just to young women, but to men too, that you can do it. And I'm always here to help, always happy to help. And all I ask is that they do the same thing.
Yeah, nice. It is not like this pie with finite pieces, right? Like there is enough for all of us in this profession. Lauren, what about you? Like any way that you support first gen students or lawyers coming up behind you?
Yeah, and I don't know that they're necessarily first gen. I'm not as giving as Jacoya is going to high schools. I would like to do something like that. It sounds great. But we have first years that come into our office. We've had two every year for the last 3 years I've been at the firm, and um, I think for some luck of the draw, I was assigned as what I call the office accountability buddy. But even if I hadn't had that role, I really enjoy working with our brand new lawyers, because first generation or not, whether you've got a family of 10 generations of lawyers or have never met one in your life, you still don't know how to practice law once you come out of law school, even if you've taken every single clinic and done every single externship every semester. And giving someone the time, like the time that I was given by people at my very first firm, to actually help you learn instead of just saying, hey, here's a file, figure it out, I think is really important. So I make sure I take the time, even if it's an hour or somebody sitting in my office, that's the sort of time I was given. And I think that that's important to get back to, because you're building a team. And if you just tell them to fight for themselves, your team's not going to get any stronger.
Yeah, no, that's great. And in line with that, I've heard this a couple times about like making the profession more welcoming to first gen folks, or how hard it is to picture yourself in this kind of career if you haven't seen someone who was like you doing these things. Raven, do you have any thoughts about what are some small things that, kind of speaking more broadly to like every lawyer, first gen or not, that we could do in the profession to make it more welcoming for first gen attorneys?
Ooh,
Probably a million things we could all be doing better.
I think we can be a little bit more honest about what we feel as attorneys. I went to LMU last week. They're doing a mentorship program essentially to help students not forget who they are in the world of law school, and losing themselves because of the high depression rate and alcoholism and things that we have as lawyers. I'll say I met Lauren through T-ball. The conversations that we got to have through T-ball might not have happened, or maybe they would have, because Lauren's he kind of gets in your business, but they likely would not have happened if we were not completely honest with who we were, where we were at, what it is we were doing. And so I think if lawyers were a little bit more honest about, I hate billing hours, but I have to do X, Y, and Z, or I'm kind of getting burnt out from being a prosecutor for 4 years, but I think a lot of lawyers would be a lot more happy. I think like Cole said, he does CrossFit. Most of the attorneys I know, if I ask them what they do on the weekends, it's drinking, and then during the week it's work. I leave work at work as best as I can, unless I'm in trial. I leave it at work, and once I leave the office, I'm at yoga. I'm doing something else. And so I think for those of us that have a life outside of our job, if we could pull people in to that as well, it would definitely help the profession.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think, that's great. Morgan, what about you? Anything that you kind of comes to mind when you're thinking about what the profession could do to be more welcoming to first gen lawyers?
Yeah, thanks, Alex. I think being involved in things like this, like the TPA, I always say great things about our organization, because I feel like it's not only a bunch of like amazing, like super smart attorneys, but they're really good humans. And so I really like to be around our board. And I just think that being involved in these organizations where we can pour back into law students, we have so many initiatives where we get to go back to the law schools, or we get to mentor law school students through the Diversity Leadership Institute. So those are just a few ways that we can pour back into future attorneys. And then also through our mock trial program, we get to pour into law or high school students. And I love what Raven said about like working out and things like that, because it's so kind of hard to, it's easy, I'll say easy to forget to do that, because you're so involved with the constant hustle and grind of work and family. And I think family is top priority, but it really does get to be a lot when you have work and all these priorities. So I know for me personally, I have a gym membership. I I don't go all the time at all. But I did just get a treadmill and I do Pilates now. So I'm not the biggest person that works out. Like I'm not the biggest workout person. I don't do it a lot at all, but I think that's super important. It's super good for our just physical health and overall well-being. So I think that's super important. And just like I said, continuing to be involved in TV, like board associations like this, where we get to have these like strategic, intentional initiatives where we pour back into students.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we've got to find things that fill our cup in this profession. And I think, if you were a young lawyer who was lucky enough to practice in one of your first jobs at an organization or a firm that valued that and supported that, that's great. But if you weren't, I think then it can be really hard to kind of set that for yourself later in practice. And so I guess I encourage anyone in a kind of a position of power that kind of creates the culture at their workplace to like encourage a culture where people can take vacation and and take and leave work at work and work appropriate hours and have time for their personal life, and like to the extent that we're creating a culture that kind of can do that, I think that's great. And I think, of course, I'm a big fan of bar associations, and I am a strong believer that for better and for worse, bar associations can be hard to break into as a young lawyer. Like it is hard to know, how do I start getting involved? And so I was so lucky to have a mentor in my first job that was involved in the TBA YLD and said, hey, come on to a meeting and meet people. Or like, hey, I heard, so and so is about to not run again for this position. Maybe you should throw your hat in the ring. And I think anytime we can like bring someone up with us, I think that's so great. Cole, what about you? Anything that you can think of that kind of makes that we could all be doing to make the profession more welcoming for first gens?
I mean, honestly, personally, I feel like we are as welcome as we possibly can be. I mean, definitely agree with Raven, because it's one thing to hear during law school from maybe fellow students or other professors that actual practice is very different than what we learn in law school. I mean, until we actually get our hands on it. But I think this was touched earlier on in the segment. I believe the resources are there. They are all there. I know TBA is definitely doing more mindfulness and wellness. I know they're definitely pushing more on that, which is amazing. But the resources are there. It's just the law students have to go to it. They have to want to do it. So you can't force anyone to do it, but just general encouragement. I mean, which I think everyone is doing pretty well with, just encouraging, being there. But it's up to the law students to listen and do.
Yeah.
That's what I think.
Nice. And to that point, and to Raven's point, I just think storytelling, sharing stories, sharing information, being truthful, I think that is so helpful. Well, we're kind of wrapping up, but while we do, I would like to kind of pitch this to everyone. And if you could give one piece of advice to a first gen student starting law school, or maybe a first gen student about to graduate, starting their practice, what would that be? What would that look like? Should we start just in the order they are? Cole, do you want to start that?
Oh, very much so.
Sure, please.
Because let me tell you the one thing that's going to happen if you do not have anyone else in your family who is a lawyer. They are all going to come out of the woodwork begging for legal advice. They're all going to come out of it. And just don't, just don't. It to save you all the headache you can, especially if your family is like mine, full of relatively smart people who, even though they're coming to you for advice, they still apparently know everything. And it's a headache. Number one rule of thumb, don't work for family. Just don't. If they come to you for advice, like my supervisor told her family, oh, I'm sorry, I can't do that. Sorry.
It's
Go
nice
go
when you have
talk
a
to an
judgment
actual
to figure
attorney.
out. Yeah.
Like, just don't do stuff for free for family.
And how do you set those boundaries? Because I do think it can be hard, especially for first gen lawyers who maybe haven't seen that, in experience. Like how do you set those boundaries with family or friends or something?
I think at that point it would determine, the dynamic with the family. Like I,
Yeah.
I love my family to death, but some of them had to get the tough love. Very much just it's either, sorry, that's out of my wheelhouse. I don't know, but maybe I can connect you with someone that is their ordeal or that is their specialty, or it's just all right, to give an example. So my grandmother passed away in June, named me executor. And my mom, who's a doctor, God love her, the most stubborn person I've ever met. Again, love her so much. When administering her estate, and my grandmother's estate, it was a small estate, very simple. Apparently, my mother did not like that I was doing all the P's and Q's and this, that, or the other. And I lovingly told her, you know what? If you can do it better, here you go. Do it yourself. I'm done. I'm out. It's easy. Do it yourself. Here's the paperwork. Go to the clerk's office. Have fun. So that was on hers, and is like I told her, I'm not going to tell you how to give me medicine or any medical diagnosis because I didn't go to school for that. Please don't tell me how to be a lawyer because you did not go to school for that. You did not pass the bar. You did not get your license to play law. So
Yeah.
sometimes that tough love has to come in handy.
Yeah, I think that's true. That's good advice, and it uh, easier in theory than practice sometimes, in my experience too. But a needed skill to start developing now. Lauren, what about you? What piece of advice would you give a first gen law student or a young lawyer just starting out?
Sure. I think one thing that's always that it took me a few years to realize as an attorney is um, whether being a lawyer needs to be your entire identity or not. And this kind of goes back to what Raven was saying about leaving work at work. I think when you see lawyers who have been in a family of lawyers, you're like, well, this is what they were meant to be, and they're so good at it and they love doing it. And that doesn't have to be what you are. You can be a really good lawyer without that being all you are. So for me, I love everything I do outside of practicing law. I'm really good at practicing law, but I kind of use it as a way to enable me to have the life I want to have outside of practicing. And I think once I figured that out, a few years in my practice, I felt a lot more satisfied that I wasn't necessarily, you know, having to be a lawyer and that's it. And once I figured that out, I think I started to enjoy my practice a lot more.
Nice. Actually, that's really good advice for me to hear from you. It's kind of comforting because if someone asked me to describe myself, I would probably, being a lawyer would probably be the fourth or fifth thing I said about myself. It certainly wouldn't be in the top three. And I think I've always kind of felt like maybe something was wrong with me. Like, do I not care about this profession enough to put that at number one? And there's a lot of comfort in hearing you say that. So
Yeah, it's
no one
not
else
exactly a
can-
day job, but it's also not your entire identity. It doesn't
Yeah.
have to be.
Yeah, agree.
Let
Raven,
the record reflect you are a Wildy rock star, okay? We all know how incredible you are.
that's sweet. I love being a lawyer.
Everything you do for this board.
Thank you. I love being a lawyer, but I certainly don't feel like it's my whole identity, you know? And yeah, and I'm glad to hear that, that kind of resonates with maybe some other first gen folks too. Morgan, what about you? What advice would you like to give first gen law students or young lawyers starting out?
I think my last bit of advice is just apply for it, do it, ask for it, and let them tell you no. I know my first year, my first summer, I had two clerkships, judicial clerkships. They were not even in Tennessee. So those were through sending out my information and my resume. And then my second year, it was through OCI. That's how I got my summer associate position. But you literally can get it so many ways on these opportunities, whether that's through networking, word of mouth, OCIs, or just sending your information in, or just asking, hey, do you have an opportunity for me this summer? Or even if you're, I guess, a practicing attorney and not just the summer. So just asking for it and applying and putting in the work and putting in that preparation.
Yeah, I think that's so true. Like you can apply for these things. You belong. You deserve to be here. You deserve to be considered with everyone else. Like, yeah, you're exactly right. Raven, what about you? What advice would you give a first gen young lawyer or a first gen law student?
For the first gen law student, I would say do not shoulder the pressure of your family. I stressed myself out so bad in law school because every time I went home, it's, oh my gosh, the lawyer's here. The lawyer's here. That's my lawyer. Can't wait till she graduates. That's my lawyer. And I felt like I could not fail because if I did, I let everybody else down. Everybody who you didn't even come to my high school graduation, college graduation. But I thought, if I do not do this, one thing I've let my entire family down. Don't do that. Run your own race. No one knows what law school is like until they are there. Focus on you. And that would also go to young attorneys. To focus on you. Do not compare yourself to what your classmates are doing, where they are. I guarantee you might love your job and they are miserable. Focus on you, run your own race, and don't shoulder any stress that is not warranted.
That's great advice. That's really great. Takoya, what about you? What advice would you give a young first-gen lawyer or law student?
I echo everything that Cole and Raven said. I have blocked family members, and that is okay. You can still pray for them and wish them the best, but that is okay. I've also said to my cousins that call all the time, can you call a doctor and ask for free medical advice? No, they're going to charge your insurance every time. You don't have legal insurance, so legal advice isn't free. And it sounds cold-hearted, but they will call you for the simplest things. I saw water on the floor in Walmart. Great job. Glad your eyes work. But that's not the advice that I would give. I just wanted to echo that. The advice that I would give is stay authentic to yourself. One thing that I always have a law student ask me is how do I work and not be judged for my long nails? My nails are my therapy. I know we talked about going to the gym. I'm going to get my nails done every 2 weeks, and I'm going to sit down and talk to my friend turned therapist. But the reason why I can do that is because I am so confident in my work, and I don't let let me go back. I let my work speak for itself. So then you can't judge me for my nails or my big hoops or my curly hair or whatever you may see, because my work speaks for itself. So stay authentic to yourself. The legal profession will pull you in many, many, many different ways. But trust that your experience and your background is an asset. A lot of us first generations thinks that our background and our experience is our limitation. It's not. It's an asset. It will help you get further in the legal profession, and you will have a different look into the legal profession than so many others.
Yeah, that's such a nice sentiment to end on. I appreciate everyone sharing their stories. I think there's a lot of power in just storytelling. I'm glad we were able to come together and just talk about our paths and advice we have and kind of the hopes we have for the future of the profession. Thank you all. This was wonderful. See you soon.
Thank you.
Bye.